Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Waxcast podcast. I am your host, Gavin Wax. Today is episode 15, and I am joined by a fellow podcaster, a fellow New Yorker, a fellow conservative, a gentleman by the name of Evan Ross, who is the host of the Empire State Conservatives podcast, a podcast that I have been on frequently. It's a great podcast. You should check it out. Go subscribe, go give them a like, go give them a review. But I wanted to bring Evan on today to talk about a different topic, a little outside of the normal kind of electoral politics that we've been diving into. I want to talk about the lockdowns, the conditioning, kind of the mass brainwashing we've seen as this COVID pandemic has swept the nation. So I wanted to bring on Evan. Evan, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me, Gavin. You know, we've had you on the show a few times, and I'm very happy to be on yours. I was really excited when you launched this. I was like, yes, finally, Gavin, the guy who can talk until no end, finally has a podcast.
Well, and I am here to return the favor because you reminded me how much I can talk when I joined your podcast, and now I'm here to do it on my own. So I appreciate that, man. And yeah, it's a lot of work. I mean, I have to say before we jump into it, I mean, I have a lot of respect for people doing podcasts now. Like I am, I'm trying to hustle. I'm trying to get an episode out every day. It's not easy. This is you got to commit yourself.
Yeah, it's a lot of time. It's a lot more time. But these the new platforms, that the one you're using, the one I use, definitely makes it a lot easier. But definitely, guys, definitely check into our show. And it's if this is the first time watching Gavin's show, he's amazing.
Thank you. And I love your setup. As soon as I can get your setup, not just my messy bed, then I think we'll be in good shape. But anyway, I want to talk to you because we're both New Yorkers. We both had to experience some of the worst lockdowns. You're on Long Island. I'm in the city. So both areas were hit hard by the virus. And I'm sure you have a lot of friends growing up who have been completely inundated with the propaganda, who believe King Nipple Rings Cuomo is some sort of godsend among men who saved everyone, saved the country, saved the city, saved the nation, when in fact it couldn't be anything farther from the truth. And
the exact opposite.
It's the exact opposite.
Highest death rate in the nation.
Highest death rate in the nation, highest case count, highest everything, every metric, every way you can quantify this thing. He has failed, but they eat up the propaganda, and now they think that all his lockdowns and his mask mandates and all this other BS that's not based on science is going to work when it hasn't worked. If it worked, we wouldn't be in the situation we are in right now. It's a respiratory illness. It peaks in the winter, and we have the death rate hasn't really moved up. They talk about nominal rates, but they talk about nominal values, but the death rate itself hasn't moved. So what do you think about all this? Are people just being conditioned to just accept authority and just give up our liberties? Is this a giant mass psychological experiment we're facing?
Well, they've been doing this for years, so this isn't anything new. And when we started the Empire State Conservatives podcast, I came up with our tagline, which was "Don't let fear take your freedom." And that's exactly what they do. They utilize fear. It's all about fear. So it's the lockdowns are necessary because if you go outside, guess what? You're going to kill grandma. But, you can go to Walmart and Target. That's fine. But every other business needs to close. We can't have indoor dining. You have to wear a mask everywhere. But, it's fine to go into Walmart, which is the dirtiest store in the history of America. It's all conditioning. It's all designed to create fear. It's all designed to create division. And every major story, essentially, at least for the last 5 years, probably longer than that, has been designed to create division. And this is what they do. And we saw it starting even going back to the Michael Brown shooting, right? They pushed the false narrative of hands up, don't shoot. When that was proven false, did they recant it? No.
They doubled down.
That was it. They left it. And what happened when Darren Wilson was not even indicted? President Barack Obama, I'll give him the respect for that, even though I can't stand the guy and I think he was one of the worst presidents we've ever had. I'll give him the respect. He was the president. Did not come out and say, listen, this is how the justice system works. This is what happened. And justice was done. He said, oh, we need to deal with this, right? It was, we will move on and we'll heal, right?
Right.
It wasn't, no. This guy was a criminal scumbag who tried to murder a police officer in his own car. And this is what they do. All these things are designed to breed division so that regardless of what the truth is, either side is just not going to trust it.
Divide and conquer. That's how you defeat people. That's what Caesar did when he conquered Gaul. He split the tribes up and then he beat them one by one. That's what they're doing to the American people. We're getting divided. We're having different sides of the American society as being brainwashed, as being fed propaganda. I think they're good people. I think they're people who just aren't informed. They're not getting the right information. They're getting a biased news source and they're running with it. And if I was getting spoon fed the same thing, I may be inclined to believe what they believe. I mean, it's all designed that way. And it's a real sad state of affairs because we were a country built on individualism, on this rugged spirit, this anti-authoritarian mindset, anti-government. You know, you think of the Great West, you think of cowboys, you think of the American frontiersmen. I mean, this is a country that wanted to buck all the trends, buck all rules, and just live our own lives. And now what we're seeing the big hand of government in some of the most disgusting, oppressive, Orwellian ways. I mean, the mask mandates are not based on science. They don't work. This is literally just about dehumanizing people, isolating people, destroying the fabric of civil society, where you have these familial bonds, where you have these other bonds of friendship and community. They're trying to just wipe it all down and atomize us. So we're all just living in our pods, eating our bugs, and ordering Amazon and ordering Netflix and Uber Eats. That's what they want. They don't want a town square. They don't want a community. They just want to dominate you by isolating you and making you scared to leave your homes. Am I right or am I crazy?
No, you're 100% right. They want docile slaves to the government. This is what they want. And again, my former co-host Tack would always say the government's going to move to protect itself, right? So what happened with President Trump? The people started waking up, right? We started being like, hey, there's a lot of stuff we don't like about what's going on in Washington. So what did the swamp do? It moves to protect itself. And you see it happening all the time. But the division is the key, Gavin. You were 100% right. It's about dividing because what was it? I forgot who said it. It was America will never be conquered from outside, right? You cannot conquer America by force.
Right.
It has to be broken down from within.
Right.
You have to divide Americans. You have to make America weak. And this is what they have done. And this is, I hate to say it, this is looking like the culmination of years and years of work. It's years of PC culture. It's years of cancel culture, right? It's the lockdown. It's if you don't like the lockdown, then you're a bad person. And you know what? You should call the cops on your neighbors if they're not abiding by these ridiculous lockdown rules. Because if you're a good person, it's okay to snitch on your neighbors. It's okay to be that person because they're bad people. If you're a Trump supporter, you're a bad person, right? This is what they do. They divide us and they make Americans into enemies of each other.
Yep. I still blame the tattletales from when we were growing up. I always hated those guys. You know, they were always the worst people, and they grew up to be the worst people. I think it starts when they're young. I mean, that's what they're doing. But you're right. I mean, it's really scary. They're forget neighbors. They're turning family members on each other. I mean, they're twisting like your children's views, and they're ratting on their parents, or parents don't want to see their children, or children don't want to see their parents. I mean, it's disgusting. It's Maoist. I mean, this is what they did in Maoist China, is that they tried to break up the family unit by having them rat each other out and have them not trust their parents and have them just be completely subservient to the state. I mean, it's creepy. It's just absolutely creepy. This is not about public health. This has never been about public health, because if it was about public health, these measures would have worked. They would have been backed by science, but they're not. They have to keep doubling down on it. And if you look at the places, either internationally with Sweden, or if you look at domestically with Florida, there's no difference. And most of the time they're doing better because they've reached herd immunity quicker than the states that had these massive lockdowns. If you want to talk about New York, the policy failings were not because of lockdowns or mask mandates. We did plenty of that. It's because we stuffed the nursing homes. So we know why the death count was so astronomically high. We should have been protecting our most vulnerable instead of just doing this blanket destruction of civil society. Now you have the city that's completely gone kaput. I mean, restaurants are closing. There's nothing left. It's turning into a ghost town, and they're gonna be scratching their head in a year and wondering why the whole city and state has had its economy been destroyed and no one's left, because they don't learn from their mistakes and they double down all the time.
I mean, Emperor Cuomo has been running this place into the ground for years. We were $6 billion in debt before the lockdowns.
Yep.
And now it's a double down until you get federal funding to bail you out. It's like the kid who keeps spending money until he has no money left. And guess what? Oh, my rich uncle is going to send me a check for $100,000 so I can cover my credit cards. It doesn't work. You can't operate that way. Financial ruin is a real issue.
Yep.
Not just like, oh, money doesn't exist. It's numbers on a computer. But that's what the Democrat Party believes. And I don't like to just rag on Democrats on my show, but it always ends up coming down to that because the philosophy is wrong. Yep. It's philosophy that we can spend our way into equality or prosperity, and it doesn't work And what's going to happen is you're going to see there are two schools of thought when it comes to the economy, right? There's government spending to boost the economy, which doesn't really work because if it did, the Great Depression never would have existed. And there is deregulation, allowing small businesses to thrive and expand and hire people, which does work. And we are looking down the barrel right now of, God forbid, I'm still holding out hope, but President Joe Biden, which will really be President Kamala Harris within at least like 3 months,
Right.
putting in these policies that will lead to a slow recovery as opposed to a free market recovery where people can open their businesses and people can hire people and things can get back to the way they were before coronavirus, which we would have under a second term from President Trump.
Here's where I may disagree with you. I may disagree with you what they're trying to do. What I think they're going to do is they're going to make these lockdowns and these orders and these diktats really, really rough between now and say Jan 20th. And they want to just etch into everyone's mind how horrible things were when Trump was in power. Remember when Trump was in power, you couldn't go out to eat. There were no restaurants. Everything was depressing. The economy was ruined. They want to just really ingrain that in people for as long as they can. And then the second, hopefully this doesn't happen, but if it does, the second Biden comes in, you're going to see all these Dem governors all of a sudden open up their cities and states again. They're going to just return back on the economy, and then the economy is going to spike up like crazy, and they're going to be like, look, it was Joe Biden. Joe Biden is the miracle worker.
They'll do that with the lockdowns, but the whole thing where the economy's still going to need help because you still like New York. New York was in the hole before coronavirus.
Yep.
But the entire nation is doing amazing. New York is still doing garbage because of Emperor Cuomo.
Yep.
And you're still going to have that Democrat policy because at the end of the day, they are still a big government party. That's what they want. They believe that government spending and government can fix problems, and we all know it can't. And that's what they'll end up doing. I think it's going to be a mixture of the two. I think you're definitely right, is that they're going to try to make this a whole referendum on Trump, which is absolutely ridiculous considering the rates of unemployment and the rates of GDP growth that we had under President Trump. But what they're really looking to do is they're looking to keep the American people divided. And we saw it with the masks, right? But it even just this year, right? We saw it with George Floyd. Regardless of what the circumstances of George Floyd's death was, regardless, doesn't matter. Everyone was on the same page within the first 24 hours. And then what happened? Antifa and BLM came in, started burning down cities, and it divided everybody on the issue. Every single thing, right? We were all good on the 14 days to flatten the curve. And then guess what? Nope. More lockdowns.
Right.
And we were divided. Every single thing that we do is everything that they do is to divide us. And it culminates in this voter fraud issue that we're having now. And that's the biggest thing, right? So we need to make sure that if our elections are not secure, there is no democracy, even though we don't live in a democracy. There is no faith in the republic, right? If we can't have faith in our elections, then what are we doing here?
Yeah, when you lose the faith in the institutions, the whole society crumbles with it. I mean, that's how all civilizations end, when faith is eroded, when essentially the compact that we form these nations and societies on, it's eroded, and people are just going to descend into anarchy. And maybe that's a return to equilibrium. Maybe it's inevitable. I mean, I think we're setting ourselves up as a country to head to a really dark place, and to head to a place that's very violent, that's very destructive, that's very divisive. And we're never going to return to these good old days. And that's why Biden got elected to begin with, because people look at him and they have this nostalgia effect. And they're like, oh, if I just vote for Biden, we could just return to how things were in the 90s or the early 2000s or wherever it was. And it's like, no, you idiots. No, you idiots. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. Okay, you have to get out of this simplistic mindset. Look at what they're saying. Look at what they're doing. Look at the policies they're promoting. Look beyond just the BS rhetoric. All right, you don't like that Trump comes across as gruff and mean. Get over it. Get over it. And look at what really matters, and it's the results that matter. I could smile to you all I want. I can tell you all the things you want to hear, but if I'm sticking a knife in your back, that's what really matters at the end of the day.
Obama effect.
Exactly. Obama perfected it, but that's the conditioning we're talking about. People are just conditioned to just follow on these stupid cues about, their facial expressions and how they come across and all this other dumb nonsense, and they just ignore the big picture. That's why democracy is a lie. That's why democracy has always failed us. That's why we're not a democracy. In fact, I think I saw a chart recently that said the term democracy only really it was a chart that compared the term our democracy from our republic, and the phrase our democracy only really became popular like around World War II. Before that, it was the majority. Everyone used to say our republic, our republic. You almost never heard our democracy. No one ever said that. And then they flipped it on its head. Those are like the little battles, the little things that they've been doing over the last 200 years, which have chipped away at our foundations as a society, as a republic with our constitutional freedoms and liberties guaranteed. I think it all ties back to some of these things.
Well, I think it definitely really goes back, and not even to FDR. It goes back to Woodrow Wilson.
Yep.
It really president ever. Him, and it's culminating in this election, because let's look at the two possible outcomes, right? It's either Biden goes into office and everyone on the right goes, this is illegitimate. We have so much evidence of fraud. Sorry if I just got you banned off YouTube. So much evidence of fraud, right? There's all these videos, statements, affidavits everywhere. How can this be a legitimate election? And so half the country thinks it's legitimate. The other half goes, this is ridiculous. The other way is that it flips for Trump. Half the nation goes, Trump's a dictator. He stole this election. This is ridiculous. He's a dictator. He used the military, whatever it means he did. And this is illegitimate. And he's still not a legitimate president. So either way, half the nation is going, this election is garbage or this election is good, regardless of the outcome. So either way, you have half the nation now has no faith in our electoral process. None.
How is that sustainable? You can't sustain anything like that. I mean, that's like pre-Civil War type of stuff. I mean, that's the kind of thing that will destroy the fabric of a society when half the country cannot accept the results. And I am the kind of person that if we lost legitimately, I will be fully accepting of it. I understand. I'll buckle up and we'll start re-strategizing. We'll figure out where it went wrong and we'll try to win again next time. If we live in a fair system with fair rules, that's fine. I can play that game. We can fight. We'll fight harder. We'll always do better. I have no problem with that. Legitimate loss is legitimate loss. But if there is a loss that's tainted with innumerable instances of provable fraud, of allegations of fraud and tampering and interference, that's not where we're not going to talk about the next campaign. We're not going to talk about the next strategy. We're going to be focused on how to fix this and how to reverse this BS. I mean, you can't just let an election be stolen, especially one at such a pivotal time in our nation's history, in such a pivotal moment. I mean, if we let this through our fingers, I mean, forget it. I mean, the country is never going to return to normal. It doesn't matter who we elect in 2022 or 2024. I mean, the damage will be done irreparably.
No, you can't come back from that. And the real problem, I said the exact same thing. I said, listen, if they go through every ballot and they get rid of the signatures that don't match, and they get rid of the dead people, and they get rid of the duplicate ballots, and they go through it, and Biden still wins, okay,
fine.
He won. He won. And I'll accept it. I
feel the same way. If we did the audit in Georgia and we do it by the books and it's right, it's not a fake process, and they check the right places, the right counties, and we do the signature match and all that. If they do all that and it's up to snuff and we still come short, okay, he somehow won. I'm fine with accepting that. But there's no reason to leave it hanging in the balance. There's no reason to leave that question mark there, especially if you think you won. Like if I was a Democrat and I legitimately thought I won these races, then I would be doing anything I could to just solidify that win and rub it in our face more. Let them have an audit. If I'm a Democrat, let the Republicans have an audit. Let them do whatever they want, because if I come back and I win again, I look 10 times better and I make the Republicans look stupid. But they're not doing that. They're not doing that because they know subconsciously that this doesn't feel right. They know subconsciously something is up, something's off, and they don't want to investigate because they're worried they're going to lose these leads and they're going to lose these states and everything's going to fall apart, their whole house of cards.
It's the biggest thing. I don't know. This might be a little too far back. Have you ever seen Stand and Deliver?
No, what is that?
So Stand and Deliver is a movie about a bunch of kids in East Los Angeles, I think it is, and it's a bunch of Hispanic kids that learn calculus. Okay, and they take this test that so many people fail. And they take the test and they all pass. They all get extremely high scores. And they get accused of cheating. And one of the kids goes, let's just take it again. We know we didn't cheat. And if you know you didn't cheat, have a full audit.
Yeah.
I know I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
That's it.
Actually, that happened to me once. I remember I was in school. It was like high school or something. It was like a history class. I had a teacher. He was arrogant. He was like a total like douche. He didn't know that I like loved history and I knew history really well. And I remember I wrote a really good essay. I think it was like on French medieval history or something. It was an AP class. And I remember I wrote an amazing essay. I poured my heart and soul into this thing. And he was just like, you cheated. You didn't write this. You stole it. And I was like, what are you talking about? He was like, yeah, you plagiarized it. I was like, I didn't plagiarize it. Show me where I plagiarized it. Run it through your things. He's like, oh, I couldn't find anything, but there's no way you wrote this. I'm like, fuck. I'm like, seriously. I'm like, fuck you. Like, I did write this damn thing and I'll write it again. I'll write it in front of you. Like, and I was literally like pushing back on him. And then he kind of was like a little taken aback. He's like, oh my God, like, did he actually write it? If that's a stupid analogy, maybe it's far off, but that's exactly what we're doing in this election right now. It's like, if you got nothing to hide, show your cards, go through the process. You should want it just for the health of society. You should want it just for the health of society. If it was flipped and Republicans were being accused of it, I would say, yeah, do the audit. Do the audit. We won. Let them do it.
If Trump had those weird numbers that jumped in the middle of the night, I'd be like, listen, I'm happy that he's up, but we really need to look into this. It's the same thing with the whole Russia collusion thing, right? Yeah. I was like, listen, I'm not happy about our tax dollars being spent on a ridiculous thing that sounds like something out of a really, really bad Michael Bay movie. But, we need to make sure that our leaders are not pawns of foreign governments, even though it looks like the entire Democrat Party is. But we need to make sure, right? So if he hasn't done anything, they'll do their investigation and we'll be good. And I work with a bunch of leftists. And they were all like, he's going to prison. They're going to drag him out of the White House in handcuffs. Like, oh, okay. I'm sure. I think everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And when everything came out, we were good. And I didn't even need to say anything because I knew. So I said, do your investigation. At the end of the day, I know he's going to be okay. That's it. So let's audit the votes. Let's look at every single ballot. Why not? Yeah. Why not look at every single ballot?
My only thing with the Russiagate thing is like that it just killed the first term for us. Like we just lost so much time and energy because he was under this negative aura of BS allegations that were never proven. And they took up time. They divided the administration. They created so much chaos, which is what they did. They really really just like took the wind out of the first term. I mean, he still accomplished a ton, but that's what it was. It was all just they waged total war, and we never waged total war back. We just play like we play softball while they're playing like major leagues. Like they come at us everything they have.
Us though, right? Because it was people who believed that the president had to be a Russian pawn, right? There was no way Hillary could lose to Donald Trump. It was impossible. It had to be Russia.
Which is such self-projection because they're the ones, now that we know Hunter Biden and all of them, the Bidens, the Clintons, they were the ones who were all in bed with these foreign governments, whether it was Russia, whether it was the Saudis, whether it was the Chinese, whoever it was, they were the ones taking money.
Years they've been in bed with Russia. How many pictures we have of Hillary Clinton hanging out with Vladimir Putin?
Yep.
That's the Soviet playbook, right? Yep. If you do something shady, how do you take the heat off of you? Accuse your enemy of doing it. Why? Because you know the exact steps that you took to do it, so you can accuse them with great detail.
Yep, it's all self-projection. It's typical sociopathic behavior. But before, I don't want to delve too much into the political scene. I mean, we could talk about that in another episode for hours. But let's go back to the conditioning and kind of just the way that the mainstream media, big tech, and these political oligarchs, really just influence the minds of the masses. And they really just drive home this message through lies and repetition and more repetition and more lies and more smear and defamation. Like they have everything down to a science in terms of how they can destroy opposing voices, how they can ingrain a certain viewpoint regardless of the facts. And people will just accept it wholesale. People who otherwise are generally good people, who are generally pretty smart, who generally know what they're doing in most things, but they seem to be able to con tons of people into buying this. And you can't have a free republic if you have a population that's brainwashed and a population that's deluded into buying this sort of propaganda. That's not a healthy society. But they've seemed to have mastered it. How do you red pill people? How do you fix them? How do you get them back to seeing, the light and seeing, what's really out there and what's the truth and being more skeptical of things? Because a skeptical society is a healthy society. How do we get to that red pill moment with people at large?
All right. So the real problem with red pilling people is not everybody will take that red pill.
Yeah, I agree.
That's the big problem is that, and this is a thing that is hard to say to some people, is that the majority of people are sheep.
Yeah.
Not to say that in a negative manner. The majority of people are sheep.
I agree.
go about their lives. They want to eat. They want to live. They want to be with their families. They don't care about what's going on around them. They just want to be protected.
Yep.
That's what they want. So the sheep will not be red pilled.
Yep.
But what I try to do is, and I believe that I'm pretty good at reading people, and I will seek out those people I believe can be red pilled, and I'll do it slowly. I'll have little conversations with them, and I'll just keep stating my point, and I'll be like, look it up for yourself. Just look it up. I'll give you sources if you want to look them up. I'm not going to hammer this home with you. I'm going to let you do it yourself. And I've done it to several people that I work with who were giant liberals, and now these people are just like, we are big trouble with Biden. This stuff is not working. The government's not helping us. It's like you finally realized it. It's like I didn't even have to push you over the edge. I just planted that seed and I let you go with it. But it's not going to happen with everybody.
Agreed.
But the thing is exposure, and that's what the mainstream media has a stranglehold on.
Yep.
Right? So podcasts like yours, podcasts like mine, you hopefully are not being shadow banned yet. We have been heavily shadow banned basically our entire existence. I made our original Instagram, Empire State Conservative Network, hit enter, boom, taken down immediately. Yep. No, not one post.
That's why I didn't put conservative in my name. No, people probably think I make wax figurines or something on this podcast.
You're smarter than I am. I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, oh, we're the Empire State Conservative Network. Let's do it.
It's a good name.
Yeah, no, immediately banned. Immediately. No one post, nothing. Literally enter and you banned. That was it. And that's what we did. And we've been heavily shadow banned ever since. Our Facebook page has over 13,000 followers. I have to bust my ass so hard to get us 2,000 views on a video.
Yeah.
I have to share it everywhere. I have to host watch parties.
I've seen it. You shared it to me. I mean, you hustle, man. I got to give you credit. I mean, you push, you work against those algorithms. You make them work.
It's the only way. Because the other way, I literally have people go, oh, we got the notification of your live stream on Friday. I go, that's the Tuesday live stream.
Right.
Because our followers are not being shown our posts.
Yep.
People are not being shown our things because of how we operate, because we were dumb enough, I guess, to put conservatives in our name. And
I mean, you would think you don't have to live in a country like that. You would think you could just be open and honest and say, look, these are my viewpoints. I want to go out there and you don't have to be censored. I mean, what's funny is that the left basically admit that our ideas have merit and our ideas are right because they're always trying to come down on them. If they thought our ideas were crazy, if they thought they were crank, if they thought that no one would buy into them, then they would have no need for the propaganda. They would have no need for the censorship. I think there's that meme that goes online that says if everything was fine and dandy from their perspective, they wouldn't need to do all these things. They would just be asleep at the wheel, but they're active and they're aggressive and they're over the top and they really just come down hard on anyone in alternative media, killing their reach, killing their views, because they are so worried that a message that differs from their orthodoxy, from their line of thinking, anything that opposes that would spread like wildfire, and it would just really destroy the base of their power, their money, their control, and the whole lot, and the whole thing would come crashing down.
But the problem is that it actually has the opposite effect that they want, or maybe they do want this effect, is that it pushes people to further right sources. So instead of people just going to you or to me, who I think I'm pretty mild conservative. I mean, I'm like straddling the line between conservative and libertarian. I consider myself a constitutionalist, and then most of it's just government, leave me the hell alone.
Right.
And don't make me pay for other people's stuff. But they are pushing people towards the far right because they're not allowing them to see the moderate people. And instead, they're going down these rabbit holes or going into 4chan or all these other websites that are on the dark web. And they're going down these deep rabbit holes where they're just getting into different echo chambers. And it's again, further division. Because I played my show for people who are classical liberals or moderates or just apolitical, who are not conservatives, and they go, I see what you're talking about. I get it.
Yeah. And I understand that. I think I'm probably a bit to the right of you. I think I probably used to describe myself along your lines. I'm probably more of a national populist type of guy now, but I'm definitely in the same vein of a lot of what you're saying. But I definitely see that. I think they definitely shift people. I think it backfires though. I have to say I think it's going to backfire on them because what they're doing is so blatant that you have to be so dishonest to say, oh, conservatives are not getting censored. I mean, I can't even go and retweet sometimes the president of the United States without having to read an essay before I try to retweet him. I mean, there is no way someone with any honesty in their being could sit there and say, oh, this is normal, this is fine. There's no bias here. This is free and fair. BS, free and fair.
Okay with the bias. That's the problem. And I talked about this. I saw you had Angel on an episode
yesterday. Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
We had him on also. We talked about the same thing. They're okay with the bias because it's in their favor. And I've talked about this. I call it selective tyranny. I'm not the only one who does it. I wish I could claim that credit. It's selective tyranny. It's when you're in charge, you get to make the rules. But one day, someone else is going to be in charge. And then they're making the rules. And then you're going to be the one crying foul. Instead of, let's let everybody talk, and you can speak out against things that you don't like. But instead, you're okay with your guy pushing down the other side because it helps your cause. But they don't see what's going to happen with that. It's the same thing where they're talking about Biden packing the courts, right? They're fine with it. Okay, but what if President Trump wins? Would you find him packing the courts? Oh, no. No, that's no good.
I mean, I think we have to just accept that the political process, there's no consensus anymore. It's all hypocrisy. It's all about power. It's all about control. And I do think to a certain extent, if they're going to play dirty, we need to play dirty back because when we take this kind of white glove approach where we're just going to be prim and proper and we're going to just kind of lean back and let them do their dirty deeds, that's where we always come out on the other end with a short stick. I mean, I think we have
to push back. I'm not saying we can't push back, but we have to avoid what people like, what's his name? That dude on YouTube. I always forget his name because he's just completely worthless. That super far right guy. I forgot what his name is. But he's all for like the government banning pornography and all these other things. And I'm like, dude, you're talking about authoritarianism, but a right-wing authoritarianism. We cannot have authoritarianism in our nation. We need to get back. We need to be pushing towards freedom as opposed to pushing down the side we don't like. Pushing back, yes, 100%, because we've seen with education, right? Conservatives gave up on education, and now look, the public school system is a liberal freaking farm of nonsense and garbage. So we have to push back. We can't not push back because we've seen what happens when we don't push back. We lose.
I would love to have a podcast with that debate, banning porn or not to ban porn. We got the conservative moralists and the more libertarian guys like you on one side. I would love to hear that debate because I think it'd be interesting. I think it would be interesting. And look, I take the approach that, the left, we need to combat the left with a big coalition. I'm fine with working with more Christian moralists. I'm fine with working with more constitutional libertarians. I'm fine with whoever. I think there's a lot of common ground to be found. I think if you engage in politics, it's about coalition building. It's about alliances. It's about pragmatism. It's about, winning victories on the margins and in small battles here and there. So I'm not like this, ideological purist who's going to come in and be like, I have my ideology and have my views, don't get me wrong. But if I'm going to engage in politics, then I have to understand that I'm never going to get to the hill I want to be on, or I want the country to be on, rather, in one fell swoop. It has to come through, meticulous, again, building of teams, of alliances, of uniting different interest groups and different factions together. And I think part of the Trump coalition that got him into office to begin with was kind of that mishmash. I mean, you had people that were probably more along the lines of you, kind of like the more traditional constitutional conservative types. You had people that were much more like working class populists. You had people that were kind of like almost nationalists. You had people that were even just kind of, they were just anti-establishment with no real ideology. I mean, there was a whole slew of different factions that brought him to power and was able to effectuate policy. Some he did better than others. Some he was able to achieve more, and other things, he got blocked. But that's how I view it. I mean, that's how I see it. I see it as, I'm not gonna just dismiss certain factions or certain viewpoints just because I may not agree with them 100%, because you're never going to find anyone you agree with 100%.
Oh, never. There is never 100%. And this is a big problem I see, because I'm in a lot of different groups. I have a lot of different people that I talk to, from like straight libertarians to like really hardcore religious conservatives. And they're like, oh yeah, but I'm not going to vote for him because of this one thing.
Oh yeah. So
it's like, dude, you are not going at it. First of all, we are all people. Politicians, again, still people, which is why we don't want the government to have too much power, right? They're
Yeah.
still human beings. You are never going to agree 100% with anyone on everything. It's not possible.
Right.
We're human beings, we have different thoughts. And I think this is the problem that the left will run into eventually, because they are that monolith, right? What was it?
For now.
Yeah, for now. Pete Buttigieg said there's no room for pro-life Democrats, right? There's no room in their party for pro-life Democrats. So now everyone who's pro-life will start going, you know what? I think I'm moving over to the right a little bit.
I mean, these pro-life Democrats, whoever they may be, I mean, they're living in another planet. They've been pro-life this whole time and still been a Dem. I mean, I don't think there's many of them left. I think they've all switched. But look, I'll take the few stragglers that are left for our party for sure. But this has been great. I mean, I'm glad we were able to recover a bit of ground here. I want to give the last word to you. Just let us know where the listeners can follow you, can follow the Empire State Conservatives podcast. I also want to remind everyone, please leave a review for us on iTunes. We're available now on iTunes, Spotify, Google, every podcast distribution service. And you can check us out on our website, waxcastpodcast.com. But Evan, thank you again for coming on, and please let us know where we can find you.
Yeah, so you can check out our website, EmpireStateConservative.network.com. That has links to all of our stuff, all of our shows, videos, blogs, merch, everything. You can also check us out on Facebook at Empire State Conservatives, on Twitter at Empire State Cons, on Instagram, if you can find us at _Empire State Conservatives, and on any audio podcast platform except for SoundCloud. That is the only place we are not, either Empire State Conservatives or Empire State Conservative Network. Both of those will show up our podcast. And make sure you like, share, subscribe, all that stuff for me and for Gavin, because sharing it with people who are ill-informed, people who are on our side, that's the only way to spread the word, because we're not getting any help from Big Tech.
You didn't say sharing is caring, so I'm deducting 5 points from your podcast score. You were so close to saying, you're like, because sharing is going to help conservatives build a unified reach, and we're all going to just grow together. I was like, nah, you should have just said sharing is caring.
It's been a long time since I've been in kindergarten. Okay,
fair. Also, that's some commie BS. Sharing is not always caring. All right, you have to draw the line. Give them specifics. All right, be like, listen, little Evan. All right, whatever you work for, whatever you build, whatever little playground, sandcastle you make is yours. And if anyone tries to take it, they're a dirty commie.
Yeah, I have this corner of the sandbox. You stay over there. This is my land. I'm going to defend it.
Yeah, strong sandbox borders. That's what we need to teach in elementary school. But anyway, guys, thank you all for tuning in, and stay tuned for the next episode of the Waxcast podcast.